So very early this morning, we had a massive bombshell that kind of dropped in the NFL community in which one of the league's best overall players, Myles Garrett, officially requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. And it got a lot of people thinking, could the Las Vegas Raiders be targeting or be a scenario for a guy like Myles Garrett to potentially come to? We got an actual, an entire thing that Myles Garrett basically posted on his social media, in which he put it out there that he's basically requested a trade. He put out why he requested a trade, and one of those reasons is because he wants to compete and he wants to win a Super Bowl. And I know some people want to say the Raiders are a terrible team to go to. They're probably not going to win a Super Bowl. I would make the opposite argument for the Las Vegas Raiders at this point. Winning a Super Bowl comes down to a couple of different factors, right? And the Raiders don't have a quarterback yet. We will talk about the quarterbacks a little bit later on because there's some rumors about Chip Kelly's and the type of quarterbacks he may ultimately want. But one of the things the Raiders do have going for themselves is they have a good head coach that's proven and has a Super Bowl. It's been to 2 Super Bowls, in fact. We have a defensive coordinator that's very, very elite from a scheme perspective. And we have an offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly who once had top 5 offenses in the NFL, right? 4 seasons, 2 of those 4, he had top 5 offenses. So to me, we have proven coaches. And I think to have success in the NFL, coaching is a big part of it, right? It's absolutely one of the reasons why sometimes teams have more success over a certain period and then they might fall off a little bit. We've seen that happen with Pete Carroll, right? Kind of happened when he had Robert Saleh and Dan Quinn. Dominant defenses. Those 2 guys leave. They had to kind of shift the mindset. We saw that happen with Kyle Shanahan when he had Robert Saleh. He had a couple other defensive coordinators as well. We saw the Chiefs go from, they're really, really good to they bring in Steve Spagnuolo, and now their defense is absolutely elite. And their defense has been kind of carrying them. To me, coaching matters. And I think when you're the Las Vegas Raiders, it would be interesting to bring in a guy like Myles Garrett because it makes you so much better. And what really got Raider Nation fired up was a tweet that Deanna Rossini actually put out there. In this tweet, she said that a GM just texted her that the Raiders should consider trading for Myles Garrett to pair him up with Maxx Crosby. To me, this is a very, very, very interesting thought. And truth be told, I would never think the Raiders could even bring in Myles Garrett, and we'll talk about why here in a second. But just the idea of Maxx Crosby, Myles Garrett, and Christian Wilkins together, that would arguably be the best defensive line in the NFL. Potentially speaking historically, right? Of course, that's on paper. They'd have to go out there and put it on tape. But that defensive line would be absolutely incredible. And I would love to see somehow the Raiders land Myles Garrett. Even if we had to give up the 6th overall pick, right? If we could make it work from a salary cap perspective, which we probably can't, I would love to be able to somehow see that kind of happen, right? To me, when you think about a guy like Myles Garrett, generally speaking, you have a couple of different pass rushers. You have the guys with elite movement like Von Miller. You have guys with elite pass rush technique like TJ Watt as an example. You have a guy with great technique like Maxx Crosby where he's long and lengthy as well, right? So you have different type of categories of pass rushers. But very, very, very rarely do you have a guy with all of that, right? With the Tyree Wilson type body structure. The way Myles Garrett has, right? Looking at a guy that's 6'5", 6'6", 280 pounds. The first step is probably just as fast as Von Miller. The strength, right, is like Tyree Wilson type strength. Myles Garrett's different. He is easily the best defensive player in the NFL. I don't think it's close. And imagine the Raiders being able to land that, right? I think it'd just be very, very interesting. And of course, I say I don't think it's realistic. And I say that to be 100% honest with you guys. The Raiders have $108 million in cap space. But truth be told, if you analyze cap space, if you actually really look at what's happening with the Raiders right now, they don't have $108 million in free cap space, right? Yes, the number says $108 million, but truth be told, you have 27 pending free agents. You can't go out there and play football with 26 guys on your roster. It doesn't work like that. You got to get 53 guys on your roster. And on top of that, if you lose a guy like Adam Butler, you got to replace him with an equivalence of Adam Butler or your team starts to fall off a little bit. Adam Butler last year was making $3 million. For the Raiders to bring Adam Butler back, right, that type of production, it's going to cost us north of 10. And I think if we can potentially bring back Adam Butler, we can get him maybe a little bit cheaper. Maybe it's $6-7 million. But Adam Butler is a phenomenal pass rusher. And I think for the Raiders, you got to bring guys like that back. And it's not just Adam Butler. You have guys like Malcolm Koonce, who's a pending free agent. And I know Koonce didn't play for us last year, but our defense took a hit without a guy like Koonce out there. Christian Wilkins was hurt. Obviously, we will have him healthy. But we got guys like Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick that are pending free agents. Robert Spillane is a pending free agent. Maxx Crosby wants a pay raise, right? He's talked about how he doesn't have the guaranteed money left on his contract, and that doesn't include guys like Colton Miller, who's underpaid. We got a couple other guys. And I know we might be able to save and cut some players, right? Gardner Minshew might ultimately get cut. And if you cut him, you do have to pay another quarterback, which we'll talk about here in a second. But from a cap space perspective, when you have 27 pending free agents, $108 million dries up pretty quickly, right? In my opinion, if you pay even on the conservative side, right? Hobbs gets $8 million, Mayer gets $8 million, Spillane gets $6 million, and Koonce signs a 2-year contract at an average of $8 million. You just put the top 5 or 6 free agents we have at a conservative value. You're down to like $50 million to get the other 20 guys under contract, right? Just right away. And those are conservative numbers. Truth be told, I think Merrick's going to make north of 13, 14 million. Hobbs will probably get about 12-ish. And I think Koonce could actually end up getting over $15 million this year, right? I think there's a real chance if you want to bring him back. 1 or 2 years, $15 million a year could be realistic to bring him back. If not, I could see another team sweeping in and saying, we're going to take Malcolm Koonce from you, and we'll go ahead and pay this guy because most guys recover fairly well from ACL injuries, right? I don't think it's 2002 where an ACL injury ends your career, right? We're not at that point anymore. But to me, the Raiders don't have as much cap space as we initially thought, and I just don't think it's going to work out because of that. Now, we do have to also recognize we'll make some cuts here or there. Gardner Minshew, some people think will end up getting cut from the Raiders, but that means we also got to get another quarterback. We got to figure out who's that quarterback that's going to take us to winning a Super Bowl, right? I know some Raider fans are going to say, roll forward with Aiden O'Connell. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is a good quarterback. I've pretty much, been saying this. Every opportunity he's had, he's basically lost there or he's gotten hurt, right? He had the opportunity this year to beat out Minshew. He ended up losing the job. He took over for Minshew and, he ended up getting hurt the first time and then he came back, ended up getting hurt again. And to me, it's one of those things where with Aiden O'Connell, I'm just not 100% sure if you can trust and say we're going to go into this season with him as our quarterback. Aiden O'Connell is going to take hits, right? He's not mobile. He's not able to get out of the pocket. I do think Chip Kelly's offense does favor a quarterback like O'Connell if he's able to get the ball out quickly. But I also think Chip Kelly understands that, this might be my one and last opportunity as an offensive coordinator and then eventually become a head coach. This might be his last opportunity. This opportunity right here may be it for Chip Kelly. And do you think Chip Kelly's going to say, I want to put all my eggs in this basket of Aiden O'Connell? I don't think so. Right? And I don't really think he's going to go forward with Gardner Minshew either, although I do think Minshew's a better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell. I don't think Chip Kelly's going to go down that route either. But Adam Schefter was talking about some options for Chip Kelly, and I kind of want you guys to listen into it, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Well, he's going to have certain knowledge on those guys that other people don't. He's going to have worked with all of them. And we also go back to his time in Philadelphia. Remember how much everybody wanted the Eagles and Chip Kelly to trade up to get Marcus Mariota, who's going to be a free agent this offseason. So Marcus Mariota, I think maybe that's going to be an option. But I'll tell you where else Marcus Mariota is going to be an option. In Miami with Tua, his good friend Tua. He'll be an option there. So there could be a little bit of interest in Marcus Mariota between the Miami Dolphins and Chip Kelly and the Las Vegas Raiders. And that's a great spot for Marcus because he's got 2 no-tax states. Oh, yeah. So he's going to have some interesting choices this offseason.
He should go to Vegas, I think.
Some ooze juice down there in Miami, maybe. I like everything about that. Marcus Mariota, certainly. We got nothing but respect for Marcus Mariota. Appreciate everything he did. We got out to see Oregon. He has an entire hallway dedicated to him for everything he did out there. Certainly, that was like 15 years ago, though. I mean, that was a pretty good amount of time. What Chip Kelly and Will Howard were able to do, especially during his playoff time, biggest time of the year, was nothing short of magical. Now, Pete Carroll goes to Las Vegas. That was one part of the coaching cycle.
So there you guys have it, right? Adam Schefter is basically putting it out there that the Raiders may actually target a guy like Marcus Mariota this offseason. Marcus Mariota is a guy that came out in the draft when Chip Kelly was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Some people are like, go all in, bring in Marcus Mariota. That obviously was not something they were able to do. And Chip Kelly actually ended up getting fired shortly after that. And I think a big part of Chip Kelly not being able to have success with the Eagles was because he never found that quarterback, right? Adam Schefter believes there's a chance that Chip Kelly might actually be interested in Marcus Mariota. I probably would not go down that route. Marcus Mariota's had multiple opportunities to be a franchise quarterback. He's never been able to take hold of it. And this guy's been on multiple teams, right? He's even with the Raiders. He had an opportunity with us. He didn't look all that good. He had an opportunity with the Falcons. He didn't look all that good there either. If I'm the Raiders and you're going to go down the veteran route, I think there's better quarterbacks available than Marcus Mariota, right? I think there's a handful of quarterbacks you can target. But it will be interesting to see what the Raiders do ultimately decide to do. Something tells me they're going to target a quarterback like Will Howard. Now, I'm not sure if Will Howard's a first-round pick, but something tells me Chip Kelly, at least, he's worked with a guy like Will Howard. He knows what he can and can't do. Something tells me Chip Kelly might actually be interested in his services. We'll see, but I can almost guarantee you guys, Pete Carroll has spoken to Chip Kelly, and Chip Kelly understands who he's going to target as his quarterback. There's just no way Chip Kelly has taken this job and doesn't know who the quarterback it is that they're going to ultimately target. Maybe a veteran, may not be a veteran, maybe a rookie, maybe Will Howard, maybe Pete Carroll or John Spytek really, really like Will Howard, and they look at it like, why not just bring in Chip Kelly, who coached Will Howard for a year? We'll see what actually ends up happening with that. We do have a couple more things that are kind of coming out.
Now, before we go forward, I want to just take a second to give a big shout out to the sponsor of this channel, because this content would not be possible without Underdog. If you guys have never utilized Underdog before, trust me, man, you guys are missing out. I don't do traditional fantasy sports that often. I did do one league this year, but generally speaking, I'm not really doing it anymore. And that's mostly because of Underdog. Underdog has this game that I really, really enjoy. It's called Pick'em. Essentially, you're going to go out there and just make picks that you think are going to be right. They'll have pretty much every pick you can think of for every player, and they have multiple categories as well. So an example would be, I think Aiden O'Connell is going to throw for 125 yards. And you're essentially just going to pick higher on that, right? I think he'll have more than 125 yards. You might say, hey, Dak Prescott's going to have at least 2 touchdowns. I'll pick higher on that. You might say Caleb Williams is going to have a rushing touchdown. And some of those stats also give you multipliers, right? So usually for quarterbacks rushing it in, right? That's something most quarterbacks aren't doing every single week. You'll get like a 4x multiplier on that. So depending on the multiplier, depending on how many picks, you can turn $5 into $400, $1,000, right? Whatever it ends up being. Obviously, it depends on the multiplier, but Underdog to me is one of those places that I pretty much do every single week at this point. Very fun. It makes like watching the Jets and the Dolphins without Tua. It makes them interesting, right? So check out Underdog. If you guys have never used them before, it is the best place. Trust me when I say that. Go to underdogfantasy.com. Use my promo code that you guys see on the screen, or use the app. I recommend the app. So let's get right back into the content.
Specifically related to the Raiders coaches, there was an interesting update that the Raiders have went out and hired Brennan Carroll to be their next offensive line coach, plus their run game coordinator. If you guys don't know, this is basically the son of Pete Carroll. Brennan Carroll is an interesting hire, right? He's been with the University of Washington as their offensive coordinator and offensive line coach for the past year, and prior to that had stops at Arizona. He's with the Seattle Seahawks, Miami Hurricanes, and USC. So this guy has had a ton of coaching experience, and he hasn't been one of those guys that's just relied on Pete, right? This guy's a real coach that's went and kind of developed his own path. Of course, he probably got into that first job through Pete Carroll's connections, but this guy hasn't stuck around and just coached with his father, right? This guy's been on multiple teams, and most recently he was with Washington. And I think it's an interesting hire, however you kind of look at it, right? Because Carroll's one of those guys that's been a coach. He was an offensive coordinator this past season. Do understand Washington's head coach was their play caller, so he didn't call plays. But he was the offensive line coach regardless for Washington. Before that, he was with Arizona. And Arizona produced some NFL talent over the past couple of years. Right? Jordan Morgan's a guy that came out. He was a first-round pick. And then, of course, he was the offensive line coach there as well. And he was the offense coordinator with Arizona as well. So this is an interesting hire, right? So he'll be the Las Vegas Raiders' next offensive line coach, and we'll see what he can do with the Raiders. Obviously, I think one of the things with the Raiders is we need to make sure the offensive line as we go into this next season is 100% competent. I would make the argument the Raiders' offensive line 2 years ago was very, very bad. Last year, it did get a little bit better, but it's still not a good offensive line. I would not be comfortable going into a season saying we're going to win the Super Bowl this year with that offensive line from last year being the same offensive line. I would make the argument the Raiders need 2 new guards, and they need to figure out the right tackle position as well. I would argue the right tackle position with DJ Glaze does have promise. It does have upside, but we're not 100% sold on it. We don't really know if DJ Glaze is a long-term solution. And the thing is if you go into this season with DJ Glaze as your starting right tackle, and let's say he's not good, right? Let's say you come out there, and keep in mind Chip Kelly's going to utilize a lot of 5-man protections. He's going to line up 4 or 5 guys out wide. He's not going to be helping DJ Glaze out all that much. If DJ Glaze can't handle himself out there in space, on an island, one-on-one, the offense is going to struggle. So you're not going to be able to make that change as the season begins. You either do it in the offseason or you roll forward with DJ Glaze. We'll see what actually ends up happening, but I do think Brennan Carroll will be able to hopefully develop some of these guys, right? Jackson Powers-Johnson, I think, will be a great center. DJ Glaze, we'll see how he can kind of develop him as well as some of the other guys. Dylan Parham's probably on his last leg, if you guys ask me. And then finally, we got an update that came out, and I love hearing this type of tweet, right? I love reading, I should say, these type of tweets. Albert Breer is putting it out there that the Raiders told the candidates that they ultimately hired during their search, they were making a serious commitment with an infusion of cash from the new owners. Here it is. Chip Kelly was lured to Vegas with a deal averaging $6 million per year per sources. Kelly is now the NFL's highest paid coordinator. That's crazy right there. Chip Kelly is officially getting $6 million per year. Now, we don't know if that's a 1-year or 2-year contract, right? We don't really know. But Chip Kelly, the fact that this guy's getting $6 million and the fact that the Raiders are putting the cash investments in on the coordinators is huge. Because to be a great team, you got to have great coaches. And to have great coaches, you got to pay these guys. Especially, you know, if you're not going to go out there and hire Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, a guy that's calling the offense. If you are a defensive-minded team, which the Raiders obviously are with Pete Carroll, it means you got to go out there and hire great offensive coordinators. You got to go out there and pay Chip Kelly to want to come to the Raiders. Remember, last year there was a report that Chip Kelly ended up not taking the Raiders job because of money, right? The money was not good enough for him. And this year the money was good enough where he said, I'll take that job with the Las Vegas Raiders. I'll take that $6 million. Last year he was making about $2.5 million with Ohio State. This year he'll be making about $6 million with the Raiders. And hopefully Chip Kelly's able to stay here for at least 2 years, right? If the Raiders get 2 years out of Chip Kelly, that's 2 years in which we'll have a potentially rookie quarterback be able to work with Chip Kelly. Same scheme and system for 2 years. And we'll see how that kind of allows the Raiders to have success. And we'll see what that ultimately leads to in about 2 years, right? We'll see where the Raiders kind of are. We'll see what quarterback they bring in the development of that guy. But I love the fact that the Raiders are paying their coordinators. They're making sure that we're able to win, right? And, you know, one of the things we've heard for years with Mark Davis was this guy was, you know, from a ownership perspective, he was one of the lower revenue owners, right? He didn't make as much revenue as some of the other owners. And that's kind of changed with the Raiders going to Las Vegas. Don't get me wrong, I hate it. I hate the fact that the Raiders are in Vegas. Absolutely cannot stand it. Wish they stayed in Oakland. Would have been an hour and a half south from where I'm at right now. I hate the fact that they're in Vegas, but it makes sense for Mark Davis because Mark Davis can now bring in more cash, right? The team's a lot more valuable. He can sell parts of the team and raise a lot of cash. And that's going to allow him to bring in guys like Chip Kelly. And the hope is, you know, him selling allows the Raiders to have success, and that success will allow Mark Davis to cash in as more revenue gets generated by the Raiders having success. Right, so we'll see if that actually ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think, man. What do you guys think about the hire at the offensive line position, about Chip Kelly? I'm obviously super sick, if you guys have not noticed. But I wanted to make this video regardless because there's definitely a lot of information coming out. We got our offense coordinator, we got our defense coordinator, we got our head coach. Things will slow down over the next couple of weeks, but for now, we'll have a lot of updates coming out, right? Our roster is going to change over the next couple of weeks. We'll get some releases and those type of things. So we'll see what ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.